primary schools across England, a deadline is approaching. By 2010, the government wants every child at Key Stage 2 to have the opportunity to learn a foreign language. The good news is that 84% of primaries are already offering some form of MFL in class time. And for these Year 5 children, just back from visiting pen pals in France, even a little French seems to go a long way.
Well, some of it was confusing, but they know simple English and we know simple French, so then it was quite easy.
It's like kind of combined, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's fun to try and figure some of their words that they're saying to us.
It made me feel quite proud because I've got a different language and I can talk to other people who I don't really know that well.
But in order to meet the full primary language entitlement, schools must also help children to reach a recognised level of competence by age 11. In this film, we learn how one local authority is starting to tackle progression and visit 5 schools facing different challenges to be ready for 2010.
Okay, obviously some of you cannot take very much, and that's okay.
On top of that, we have some a bit more formal assessments, which focus on various objectives, various skills that the children have to achieve, more based on the Key Stage 2 framework. So, for example, there could be a literacy skill or a numeracy skill.
Deux croissants.
Deux croissants, très bien, deux croissants.
We've started to make tentative steps in Medway towards developing assessment techniques. We've got several schools who are going to start trialling different methods. We're obviously promoting the languages ladder because that goes right from primary through to secondary through to adult education, so we can hopefully see some sort of continuity. But a lot of the teachers are saying, particularly the non-specialist teachers, that actually assessing skills is quite a challenge for them. They're very happy to assess content, the can-do tick list approach, but when it comes to assessing skills, they need a lot more training and a lot more input.
Okay, now some of you are able to write all these words, okay? Some of you won't, but do your best. See how many you can do.
You can see that there will be a progression, and eventually we'll be able to actually use the language ladder and actually record where the children are at, what level they are at. At the moment, we're still quite low, but we're moving up, which is good.
D'accord, on y va?
At the end of it all as well, when they leave in Year 6, I want to be able to say to the secondary schools, that's what the child is at. Even this year's Year 3, 4, they're level 1. Next year they'll be level 2. By Year 6, they will be level 3, but I don't think they'll be level 4. Not quite yet. In a way, 2010 might be the year when actually you end up with 1 year group having gone through and actually reaching the level 4.
Prune. Prune. Une prune.
Une prune.
Très bien.
Poire.
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 Très bien. Une poire.
Une poire.
Très bien. Et ça, qu'est-ce que c'est?
With primary schools working hard to help pupils reach a recognised level of language competence, there's an increasing need to provide continuity at secondary.
We virtually assume we have to go back to square one, follow the secondary scheme of work, and probably in the past anybody who's had a language experience, it's tough really that we don't or we haven't taken that into consideration.
Merci. Une autre phrase.
We really do need to be able to build on the levels that they've reached in junior school, just like English, maths, science do, where the children come through with maybe a level 3, level 4, and we build on that. So we're not revisiting and redoing the same topics, because obviously that's demotivating.
For Deanwood Primary, visits by secondary teacher Nellie Malloy from Raynham School for Girls provide valuable language support and give her an insight into the language knowledge of each Year 6.
Madam Loy comes from one of our local secondary schools that our girls do, so they've already got that link there, and it gives them a way into the language. As we said, it's very practical, it's very fun, it's hands-on, so the children are going there very enthusiastic, and rather than worrying, oh, I've got to learn a language, they're wanting to get there and they're wanting to develop and build on what they've got. And the big thing for us is making sure we've got that link so the children aren't taken right back to the bottom step, that it's recognised they have got this base, and it obviously will help the secondary schools to build on it from there.
Je voudrais 2 oranges aussi, s'il vous plaît.
Très bien. Voilà.
C'est combien?
Oh, c'est 10 €, s'il vous plaît.
The knowledge that the secondary school teacher brings back from the primary school helps us to predict any difficulties that we might have with certain children, any special skills they'll come with, special communication skills. Obviously, lots of the skills you learn in languages are transferable skills, communication skills being obviously the most important one.
Très bien. Now, I was wondering if some of you have learned animals before in a primary school.
Back at Raynham, Nellie tries to find ways of celebrating the prior language knowledge of all her Year 7 students.
I tend to use the pupils who had learned French before, sort of helped with the delivery of the lessons. So they would introduce vocabulary to the rest of the class, or they would share with the rest of the class what they've learned previously. Très bien. Can you tell us what animals you remember?
I remember the dog.
Bien, tu montres à la classe? Tu montres à la classe? Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Chien.
Un chien, très bien. Alors toute la classe, un chien.
Un chien.
Très bien. Et quoi encore?
Le lapin.
Oui, c'est un...
Les lapins.
Très bien. Toute la classe, un lapin.
Un lapin.
Excellent.
When the children come from Year 6 at the primary school to us to start here in Year 7, they are confident, they have had a good experience. So yes, it's a confidence builder for all.
Comment? Il est gourmand, très bien. Excellent.
Medway is also asking primary schools to create a Year 6 profile. These will be passed to secondary schools to help them accommodate the wide range of language ability.
The secondary school said actually we have so many feeder schools we can't look at individual pupil records, but actually what we can do is we can, if say we've got 10 or 12 primary schools, we can have a quick look and see actually even if it's just what language those pupils have studied, how many years those pupils have studied that language. It gives them an idea about where to pitch their teaching, and it's actually been requested from the secondary schools, which I think is key.
Bravo, Amy.
Whether it was a tick box profile, whether it stated the levels, whether it just gave a general overview of what the children have done in their language experience, would give us an indicator of where we need to start.
Fermez le circuit. Ça marche ou ça marche pas? Non, ça ne marche pas. Ah oui, ça marche. Ça marche. Super, ça marche.
Working from the Medway plans has given schools a solid MFL foundation. But as their confidence grows, so have their expectations.
One of the biggest challenges we felt was even giving children their 1 hour entitlement, so effectively double the French that they were receiving previously. We actually found that their knowledge was actually not increasing at the rate that we'd like it to.
Le circuit est ouvert. Le circuit est ouvert. Oui, très bien, Bradley. Le circuit est...
At Cliff Woods, they're taking part in a national pilot to see what happens when you integrate language and content. For this dual Year 3-4 class, it involves learning the science module on conductors and circuits in French.
The focus was to make sure that their learning in science was maintained, but with the hope that the language learning would be brought along with that. When you do it in this way, actually you make connections. You make connections with the English, you make connections with the French, you make connections with the science words, and your sentence building skills and all those progressive skills are actually developed, I think, much quicker and much easier than when we're doing it, when we're just focusing on our animals or our colours or whatever we're doing in that way.
Ça marche ou ça ne marche pas? Ah, très bien, ça ne marche pas. Mais pourquoi? 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 Oui, en français? En français, c'est le mot en français? Français? Ouvert. Oui, c'est ouvert.
One of the major concerns would be how does that affect that subject? Yes, it might be great for French, but is that okay for science or history or whatever's being taught? The interesting thing is children actually gain a new enthusiasm for that subject because all of a sudden it's different, it's new, it's interesting, and they're actually having to be more alert.
C'est quoi? C'est éteindre ou allumer? Deux allumés, très bien.
Science and French is better when we do it both together because we learn a bit more and it's a bit harder, so we use our brains a bit more.
So read the questions out. One of the questions that you're going to pick. Am I a man's best friend? So what one would you pick out of there?
Dog.
What's that in French?
Sheep.
Excellent.
Medway is using this project as a basis for developing more creative cross-curricular schemes of work. These require a skills-based approach that's closer to the Key Stage 2 framework. But how will non-specialists cope?
I've done a small amount of French teaching in the school, and I found that I didn't really know sort of where to go with it. I didn't know what games to do, but sort of having Wendy here, she's took over the French in my class, obviously through science, and just watching what they were doing, all the different games, and ways to teach it. I'm feeling a bit more confident about that. I think I wouldn't be able to do all the talking and everything in French, but like the things that they've got to learn in French, then we need to know that anyway. So I would be able to do that. I'd feel confident doing that. So I don't think that teaching French through another subject is going to be any harder than teaching it just by itself.
I feel that the teachers themselves will actually find it much easier to actually deliver the language when it has a purpose. The children really relate to something that has a purpose. It motivates them. They can see a reason for doing it. Obviously, wouldn't expect them to speak all of the lesson in French, and myself, I'm not actually a trained specialist. I've got A-level French, but I'm not trained beyond that. But I still feel that they can deliver parts of the lesson in a range of subjects when they're just using the key vocabulary.
The light bulb won't shine.
There is a danger that it can be superficial, that you can end up with simply word level input where you're not actually thinking about both subjects together, you're actually just thinking about it in terms of one subject and how to shoehorn languages in. So what we're doing to address this is we're actually creating sample cross-curricular plans for Year 6 so that schools will actually have templates to work to, ready-made units but also ones that they can develop themselves.
And you need to label your game, okay, using the French words. Mason.
But we're really trying to get schools to actually be creative with their curriculum, and that's not just about languages, that's about other subjects as well. But I think languages is now seen so much as part of the curriculum that we can actually harness that to develop languages too.
So the circuit is Emily? Yep, that was it. Thank you.
So with a year to go, how are schools feeling about the 2010 entitlement?
I think there's a real enthusiasm in Medway, and I think we're well on target to getting there ready for that 2010 date.
Whilst we don't hold ourselves up to be experts particularly, it's something that we enjoy teaching and the children have responded very well to.
What our main aims and objectives are is simply to get children to speak French, to enjoy French and be confident in using French.
It's going to be a tough call to be ready for full entitlement. But the children have an entitlement, and what we're doing is working our hardest to ensure that they have what they are entitled to have.